The 2024 F1 season has provided some absolutely incredible races, and the Mexican Grand Prix was no exception. It had battles, it had controversy, and it had some unreal performances, but more on Kevin Magnussen later. The biggest talking point coming from the weekend, though, was Max Verstappen's defensive driving and whether it should be legal or not. The Dutch driver was played like a fiddle by Lando Norris, who forced him into two positions that earned Verstappen penalties, which took him out of the fight for a podium finish. Today, I'll check out what the F1 drivers think of Verstappen's driving and why things could get far worse for the Dutchman yet, so don't go anywhere. The 2024 F1 season continues to tease us with a title battle that isn't quite on but is one race away from happening. Lando needed to outscore Verstappen by a lot in Mexico, and while his 10-point gain was impressive, it wasn't really enough. Lando now needs 12 points more than Verstappen from the remaining 4 race weekends to win the Drivers' Championship, a goal which is probably impossible to achieve. After the two clashed at the US Grand Prix, McLaren had invoked their right to protest the decision that saw Lando Norris get a 5-second penalty late in the race for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. The penalty was caused by some very aggressive but legal defending from Verstappen, whose mastery of the rulebook should be applauded, though the rulebook itself probably needs throwing out. Lando has clearly learned his lessons from the race in Texas, though. In Mexico, the two clashed twice, with Verstappen once again leveraging his very aggressive defense to try and gain an advantage over Norris. This time, however, Lando had done his reading. He knew the rules to the letter, and as Max had the week before, he made the most of them to ensure that Verstappen got a penalty. It was the fact that Verstappen was ahead at the apex in Texas which got Lando his penalty, and Lando made sure he was the one ahead at the apex at the weekend to get Verstappen penalized. At turn 4 on lap 10, Lando went for a late lunge around the outside, ensuring that he was clearly ahead of Verstappen when the two of them turned in. Max went incredibly deep, forcing Lando off in the exact manner that he did a week earlier in Texas. However, with Lando ahead at the apex this time, Max picked up a 10-second penalty for forcing a driver off the track. Then, at turn 7, Max was completely out of control as he dived down the inside of Norris, running wide and forcing Lando off the track. It was another easy 10-second penalty for the stewards to give, and so it was by lap 10. Lando had baited Verstappen into 2 penalties which had ended the competition between the two. Before the racing had even begun in Mexico, discussion between the FIA and the drivers had happened to clear up the rules around the aggressive defensive move of ensuring you are ahead at the apex and then forcing the other driver wide off track. The FIA agreed to revise the guidelines and bring the new text for approval to Qatar in 2 races' time, taking into account the drivers' views on this sort of dive bomb defense, as it's now being called. After the race, Lando spoke about how he ensured he was ahead at the apex whenever he was trying to make a move on Max. He knew that Max would still try to run him off the road, but at least if he was ahead at the apex, then Max would be forced to take a penalty for doing it. He followed that by saying, "I am avoiding crashing today. This is the difference. I don't see it as a win or anything like this, but it's more that I hope Max acknowledges that he took it a step too far." Norris believes that Verstappen is saving his most extreme defense for him, because they're championship rivals. Just as Lewis Hamilton feels the same thing happened when he was battling with Verstappen in 2021. "I go into every race expecting a tough battle with Max," Norris said. "It's clear that it doesn't matter if he wins or second, his only job is to beat me in the race, and he'll sacrifice himself to do that like he did today. But I want to have good battles with him. I want to have those tough battles, like I've seen him have plenty of times. But fair ones. It's always going to be on the line. It's always going to be a tough one with Max. He's never going to make anyone's life easy, especially mine at this point of the year." Lando isn't the only driver that's getting fed up with Verstappen's defensive style, though. Director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, George Russell, has suggested that 19 out of the 20 drivers are aligned on what Formula One's racing guidelines should be, and was pleased to see unfair racing maneuvers penalized at the Mexican Grand Prix. No prizes for guessing who that one driver who isn't aligned might be. George revealed that all but one driver was happy for the stewards to change their approach with penalizing certain incidents immediately after Austin, rather than wait until 2025 for new guidelines. "I think the stewards are totally on board with what needs to change," Russell said. "Our view is, I think the biggest discussion is they wanted to wait until 25, so it's something consistent through this year. I would say 19 out of 20 drivers said, well, if it's incorrect, make the change today. and I'm glad to see those incidents were punished, and I suspect moving forward in Brazil, what we saw today and what we saw last week, you won't be able to get away with. With 19 of the 20 drivers wanting to see rules regarding the dive bomb defense changed, something will happen for next season. The likeliest change will be regarding the wording around who is ahead at the apex, which is what enables Verstappen to brake incredibly late and use the whole track, forcing his rival off without being punished. Red Bull boss Christian Horner obviously tried to defend his driver. He brought Norris's telemetry to a press conference to show that he had gone 15 km an hour faster into turn 4 on lap 10 than on his fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and therefore argued he would never have made the corner even if Verstappen hadn't appeared to drive Lando off the track. Of course, we'll never know if Lando could have made the corner if Verstappen had given him the room, but Zak Brown could use the exact same argument against what happened in Austin when Verstappen dive-bombed defensed Norris off the track, earning Lando a 5-second penalty, despite Max leaving the track himself. With Lando now knowing how to outplay Verstappen at his own game, and the FIA agreeing to change the rules to stop the dive-bomb defense, Verstappen's greatest weapon has been nerfed, but the troubles for the championship leader are far from over. But before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more daily F1 news, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. So with 4 rounds of the season left and Lando needing to score 12 points a race more than Verstappen to win the championship, it would take a miracle for Lando to win. But I don't think God is particularly bothered by who wins the Drivers' Championship, so up stepped the next best thing, Kevin Magnussen. On the very long second stint in Mexico, the Haas of Kevin Magnussen found himself in the very strange position of chasing down Max Verstappen to potentially take 6th place before the end of the race. Shockingly, over the almost 50-lap long second stint, K-Mag was almost a 1/10 of a second quicker than Max per lap. The double points finish for Haas was an excellent result from a team on an excellent run of form, but while K-Mag looked fast, Helmut Marko has actually suggested that it was Max who was slow. No one would expect a Haas to be chasing down Verstappen, and while the Dutchman's car appeared fine during the Grand Prix, there may have been an issue under the covers which could hurt Max in Brazil. Max had to change his engine in Mexico to one that was already in his pool, so he avoided a grid place penalty, but in Brazil he may not be so lucky. Clearly down on power and performance, Verstappen may be forced to fit a new engine to be competitive, and having already reached the limit of engines allowed this season, that could see him start from the back of the grid in Brazil, or even the pit lane if the change is made under parc fermé conditions, though that would be very unlikely. Speaking about the engine after the race, Helmut Marko said, "We will have to change one because this one was so slow. Normally we're pretty good at the end of a stint. Here, the car collapsed." Max said something similar after the race. "To get back to 6th was alright, but I couldn't even fight the Mercedes drivers in front. I had no grip, was sliding a lot, couldn't brake. Very tough one." Red Bull will need to see a significant improvement in Brazil to try and fight back against Norris. Their Constructors' Championship hopes are over, but to lose the Drivers' Championship as well would be a disaster after the start they had to the season. If Verstappen finds himself in a fight with a Haas for a low-paying points position next weekend, then it could be time to really consider a title challenge from Lando. What did you think of the Mexican Grand Prix? And did you think Max's penalties were fair? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and if you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is head over to f1reverse.com and check out our new merch store. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.